Labas, everyone? Okay, that's about as much Lithuanian as I speak. I'm Chuck Lewin, and I'm here to talk to you about Agile and how we have adapted the Agile process for Intermedics. I work for a company called Intermedics. I've been spending a lot of time here in Lithuania because of it. We've opened a big new office here down the other end of LifeSys. And I want to tell you just a little bit about it because, well, first off, we do a lot of Agile development with widely distributed teams. And also because we're looking to hire good people, and I want you guys to know what it is in case you're interested. So, Intermedics, what do we do? Well, we help healthcare providers. We help people, we help prepare for the world's biggest emergencies, especially in the US. We're primarily a US company up until recently, but we're really trying to grow a world presence here. And Kaunas is the cornerstone of that effort. So we've been involved in the care for some of the biggest emergencies in the past: Hurricane Sandy, the Boston Marathon bombing, tornadoes, all kinds of ones. We also help every day with patient care, from medics and ambulances, doctors and nurses in hospitals, and administrators who have to send bills and collect money so to keep the business open. We've been involved in 15 million patient encounters. Our software is in 17,000 hospitals. I love this slide. This came from our marketing department about more than a year ago, before we opened our Kaunas office. If you look at it carefully, you can see all the United States giant map, pins carefully placed to precisely where each of our offices is located. And then these three smaller tiny globes representing, well, the entire planet. I think half our distributors are somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If you look at that top blue pin, that's our Kaunas office. If you look at the map, I can't quite tell if it's in Finland or Russia, but I'm pretty sure that's not Kaunas. We've really come a long way in the last year. We've learned a lot. And again, I'd like to share with you some of the things that we have learned. Our office in Kaunas, we opened it less than a year ago. We currently have about 200 employees. Our technology staff is 30 of those, and we're trying to hire 20 more. We're looking to double our size again within the next 2 years. We got a great team. They work hard. They build amazing software. They play hard too. If you have any interest after this talk and finding out about job opportunities, you can ask me. You can ask most of the guys in the front 2 rows, Rolandus, or Vitotis, who works at Intermedics as well. I started working at Intermedics 8 years ago in the Milwaukee office as a software engineer. That's Milwaukee. I now manage teams, software engineering teams in Milwaukee and in Kaunas. We have a QA team in India, and we have support teams in Milwaukee and in Pittsburgh in the USA. So we cover quite a few time zones. In the last 25 years, I've been lucky to be involved in quite a few interesting IT projects. I've worked on military software for nuclear submarines. I've worked on patient monitoring software in hospitals. I've worked on the emergency care products that help save lives here at Intermedics. I've also worked on some slightly more frivolous business applications, credit card transactions, wine distribution, jewelry, all kinds of things. I've been involved in some big projects and small projects, Agile projects and waterfall, successes and failures. And what I'd like to do today is share some of what I've learned in all those. One of the things I've learned is, well, Agile projects are more successful. I've really seen that in my experience. Not always. I've been in an Agile project that didn't turn out so well, and I have been on very, very successful waterfall projects. But overall, Agile projects really do work better. And what's kind of cool is that recently there's been studies that prove that. This is an example from Scott Ambler and Associates. The green bars are successful projects. The red ones are the failures. And the yellow ones are all those kind of in-between ones. Maybe it worked out in the end, but it went a little bit over budget or was late. And what's kind of interesting is if you look at it, I mean, look at the failure rate here. A traditional project has more or less triple the failure rate of Agile. There was a more famous study a couple years ago from the Standish group that had really almost the exact same result. And why this is interesting is I think most of us know this, but some companies are adopting Agile. A lot of them are still hesitant to. And they're waiting to see the evidence that this isn't just a fad. This isn't just a bunch of people saying, we don't need requirements, we'll just make it up as we go. We don't need plans, we'll make it up as we go. No, we're really proving that Agile works. Over the years, I said I've been involved in some successes and some failures. The successes certainly were a lot more fun, but I think I probably learned more from the failures. And I thought maybe I'd share a couple of those with you now. About 15 years ago, I started work on a project for a pricing system for the biggest winery in the US. And when I got there, we got presented with binders, stacks of them full of requirements. I think if you piled them up, it'd probably be higher than my waist. If I spent the entire duration of the project, I'm not sure I could have read all the requirements. And even if I had, I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't have remembered most of it. And I'm sure I would have found all kinds of contradictions in them. So what do? Well, we had conversations. We tried to be Agile. And when that didn't work, we did go to the binders of requirements. We really carefully studied the table of contents to try to understand what was important. Kind of skimmed through everything else to see if we can find important tidbits. And we built a system. And the performance was amazing. We had 7 million different price rules. The government of the United States has an insane set of laws that cover alcohol, and they try to make it as complicated as possible. We had a beautiful UI. Everybody loved it. All our tests passed. Our QA team said the system's working exactly the way the developers told us it should work. The only problem is we didn't always calculate prices correctly. Because none of us had read all that. We certainly didn't understand all of it. We got a lot of it, but we missed some important details. The ones that affect how much a bottle of wine costs. So eventually we did get the system working. We were quite a few months late, then many, many thousands of litas over budget. I think my personal favorite is these really detailed Microsoft project plans. I think any time I've ever seen them, almost always the project's going to be a failure. I don't know if it's a false sense of security you get from Microsoft Project. I don't know if it's the fallacy that at the beginning of a project I can figure out exactly everything that needs to be done. Or maybe it's the illusion that I can take a whole bunch of work and divide it up evenly amongst however many developers I decide to throw at it. About 10 years ago, I worked on a project to build a new patient monitoring system. Patient monitor, I should say. That's the device that sits in the hospital next to your bed with all the wires connecting to you that shows the waveforms and your heart rate and your blood pressure and your respiratory speed and 100 other vital signs. The company was actually the market leader for it. They were selling lots of these devices and making gazillions of dollars. But they were really happy making all that money, so they didn't bother investing in improving it. It was great. Sales were high. Costs were really low because they weren't doing anything. Profits were fantastic. But inevitably, their competitors kept improving and improving and getting better. And pretty soon, people stopped buying their old monitors. And all of a sudden, the executive leadership said, uh-oh. All right, we need a new one fast. So they took, the team that was left of people who had worked on it and really knew what to do. Sorry, hold on a second. Hello? Any idea what I did wrong? Never mind. Okay. So they put this team together and said, we need a plan for a new monitor so we can get our market share back. And the team came up with this great plan. We're going to have all new hardware, new chipsets, faster, technologies marched ahead. New operating system. Instead of embedded Unix, we're going to run Open Linux. The UI all built in Java, able to connect to our other products. You can see your MRI scans. You can get your lab results. You can see your x-rays right on this monitor right next to the bedside. The doctor can walk up and do all that. It's going to take 2 years. Actually, considering how complicated, and you throw in all the government involvement to get approvals, that's pretty quick. But the management said, we'll give you 1 year. What do you need so we can have it done in 1 year? And the team knew they couldn't do it in 1 year. There was just too many different things that had happened that took time. So they said, we need 100 people, because they knew the managers would never go along with that. And the executive leaders said, approved. We're looking forward to having that monitor in 1 year from today. Back home, we have a saying that 9 women can't make a baby in 1 month. So we tried to hire 100 people. The people who knew what they were doing were so busy interviewing and recruiting and training and managing and communicating, they didn't really get a chance to do much. And every decision that people had to make to say, how should we solve this problem, instead of saying, what's the right way to do it, it was, what could I do to make this possibly work in 1 year? In the end, we put together a really awesome product. It's probably the market leader again now. The only problem is it took 5 years instead of 1. And it probably would have gotten done in 2 years if we just followed the original plan. And so this company spent millions of dollars, 100 people for 3 extra years, longer than they needed. Not to mention tens of millions of dollars of lost sales, because for 3 years they had the old dog product instead of the new shiny one. So what does success look like? Well, we already said Agile projects are successful. But this is an Agile conference, so I have to put that at the top of the list. Smaller teams. 100 people doesn't always help. And I've had a lot of experience on these projects, and I can tell you that way, way more often, smaller teams are more effective. And it's pretty obvious why. You start looking at the communications, and if you have 2 people, you have 1 conversation. And if you have 2 people, if you have 3 people, now you've got 3 different ways to have a conversation, and it grows exponentially. Plus, it's just so much more to manage and coordinate and link up. And what's interesting here is, again, we have the evidence that Standish study, again, showed the results for small and large projects. And the success rate for small ones was 76%, and large was 10%. the failure rates for large ones, 48%. For small ones, 4%. So 12 times the failure rate. That's pretty astounding numbers if you think about it. Clearly defined goals. This is another one where Agile really shines. User stories make excellent goals. They're short, they're readable, they're about people and what they want to do. We understand them. And I think Scrum is especially excellent too, because with its sprints, we're refocusing, we're looking at our goals, we're adjusting them for reality, and we do that every few weeks as we start a new sprint. Domain knowledge. Software development is really about trade-offs. Every day, a good developer is making hundreds of decisions about, do I make this, do I improve the quality, do I improve the usability, do I get it done faster? How well does it perform? I can probably tune a query a little bit more, but that's going to take time. And there's 1,000 trade-offs we make for the user experience. Well, I could add this new option. I could give them their choice if they want to do it this way or that way. But now that user's got to make one more decision every time they look at the UI. So really understanding not just what we're told to do, but why is incredibly important. Communications is the only way to get that knowledge and to answer the questions and to respond to change. And one of the principles behind the Agile Manifesto, of course, is self-organizing teams. We take on the work, we figure out what needs to be done, who's going to do it. If somebody's behind, we help them. We manage the work. Unfortunately, those last three parts are a lot more difficult for distributed teams, especially ones that are spread out around the globe. We face what I like to call the communication tax. If I'm sitting in an office right near Matis, I can look up if I need to ask him something and see if he's there, if he's busy, if he's talking on the phone or meeting with somebody else. I can immediately start a conversation. There's no problems with voice quality. I can peek at his screen. I can see visually his facial expressions, his body language. If he looks confused, I realize that, okay, maybe we need to talk about this some more. And if it's a bigger thing, we can walk over to whiteboard and start drawing. If he's on the other side of the globe, I pay that tax right away because I just got to figure out if he's there. You got to Skype him or IM him or call him or something. And then I got to wait to see if he responds. Did he just not see my IM? And when he does, we still have, there's no phone in the world with the same voice quality as being here. Skype does a nice job in that you can do the video and you can share screens, but sometimes the quality goes down too, depending on your network connection. I've definitely seen Skype and other tools where the video starts breaking up or your voice starts breaking up, or the connection gets disconnected and then you have to redial up and reconnect. That doesn't usually happen in person. And honestly, I've never found anything that substitutes for a good whiteboard. There's shared whiteboards on computers, but they don't have the resolution. They don't have the ability to pen and draw and do that as nicely. Now, of course, if you're 8 time zones away, like we are from Milwaukee, that increases the communication tax. When it's 5 p.m. here, it's 9 a.m. there. When we're ending our day here, they're starting theirs. So they start early, come in a few hours early, or start at home. A lot of times we'll stay a little bit late. We get a few hours of overlap. But that overlap starts filling up really fast because we like to have a daily stand-up, and we need to plan our sprints, and we need to have grooming sessions, and we have sprint review showcases. And all of a sudden, there's not a lot of time left to talk. So if I have a problem at the beginning of the day, if I'm lucky, I might get the answer at the end of the day. And if I'm unlucky, I might not get it to the end of the day tomorrow. The tax got bigger. Language barriers. There's not many people in the US who speak English. I mean, Lithuanian. Actually, not many people in America speak English that well either. And even outside, you know, in Western Europe. I mean, we're lucky that you guys seem to speak English quite well. But it's still not your native language. It's a little bit harder to understand for you, I think. And, you know, sometimes the accents makes it a little bit harder for us to understand. Tax got a little bigger. If you don't have a good phone connection or a good video connection, the sound quality can really be a barrier. We've had meetings where we're just going back and forth. What? Huh? Huh? What? So these are all problems. They can be solved. I don't think distributed teams are ever going to be quite as efficient in terms of their communications as somebody sitting next to you. But we can reduce that tax. One of the things that we've done, you know, is really basic, but I think it's been really helpful. We have our daily stand-ups, we always have, but we schedule them for half an hour now. Same time every day. They're mandatory, everybody's always there. It doesn't really take half an hour to go through our stand-up, usually it's 5 or 10 minutes. But now we've got that time window, the rest of that time, where we're guaranteed communications. So you know that the people you need to talk to will be there. And you don't have to pay that communication tax, because you don't have to reach out and find them. You don't have to start connecting to them. They're already there. So if you have questions after at the end of our stand-up, the people who have questions stay. The people who don't can leave and get back to work. It helps efficiency. Does it solve all the problems? No. But it's a little thing that helps. We do more written communication than I'd like, but we do. Some things really do require face-to-face. And certainly one of the principles behind Agile is that face-to-face communications is the most effective way. But we start doing more and more things through email. We can start things there. A lot of times we can solve them if they're not that complicated. And that communication tax gets smaller. Because if I have a question, I can type it up pretty quickly in an email. I don't have to think about it. It's not distracting me. When somebody on the other end gets it, they can reply. And there's even some benefits, because now you're getting away from some of the language barrier. You don't have to deal with accents. You can read it at the speed that's appropriate for you. And a lot of our problems really are solved that way. Maybe half of them, I don't know. But even if we only solve half of them that way, you know, those are problems solved more efficiently. And that now means that we have more time to solve the other ones that really do require conversations. Instant messaging is really similar. It's just, for ones, it gives you the chance to have a little more feedback. For ones that you could almost get by with email, but not quite. Video calls, I think, are really, really helpful, especially early on. When we started our project about a year ago, I think we really struggled with understanding each other. And part of it is, you know, there really is a lot from facial expressions that you get from body language. But also part of it is just that relationship and trust. So by seeing that person and spending time face to face, you can kind of start telling around, or is he serious? Is she pausing to think about something, or is she done talking? Psychologically, it really does improve the communications, helps you get past there. We don't do video as much as we used to anymore. I think the value is still there, but not quite as much. And we've just had some logistical issues. We're rebuilding our offices here, remodeling them completely, and other technology things on the other side as well. But I really hope we do get there. We are installing new phone system where we have every single person in the world who works for Intermedics has a video phone. It can dial anybody else with 5 digits. We're rolling that out. And we are putting pretty advanced Cisco video conferencing in several of our offices, because it really does make a difference. Another big one is ambassadors. So if our product owner is over in Milwaukee and we over here in Kaunas have questions, it really would be helpful if there was somebody here who could answer them. And that's one of the roles that I'm serving right now. I don't know all the answers, but I do know a lot of them. So I can act as a proxy for the product owner, speeds up a lot of the communications and the responses. Another experiment we just started a month ago was, 2 months ago, we hired Andrus as a business analyst in the Kaunas office. And he also is going to act as an ambassador, as a proxy for our product owner. Sometimes he'll have to defer to her with questions. But the idea is that's his entire job, is to act like the product owner, really master the business details so that he can answer all those questions. And that really shrinks the communication tax, because now we're having a face-to-face conversation again. And last off, travel and time together. So I have 3 teams here in the Kaunas office that work on my products, and I've tried to send almost everybody on those teams over to the States. I know there's a few of you guys who I still need to work on, sorry. But, you know, it's really, especially at the beginning, when you don't know our business, you don't know our products, you don't know our systems, you get over there, you build those relationships with the people that you need, and you get a chance to learn. You get rid of that communication tax in terms of you're face-to-face again. You've got the whiteboard, you've got the screen, you can see each other and hear each other clearly. And you get around the time zone issue, because now I can spend all day talking to you and working together instead of a couple hours in the evening when everybody's shuffling between meetings anyway. So what's interesting to me is if you look at the principles behind the Agile Manifesto, and I don't know if you've already seen this today in some of the other presentations, sorry if you have, but if you look at them, there's not that much about distributed teams. There isn't anything in the manifesto itself, but our highest priority is to satisfy customers through continuous delivery. We can do that distributed. We welcome changing requirements, even late in the game. We can do that from anywhere. We deliver working software frequently. We can do that from anywhere. Business people and developers work together daily throughout the project. This one's a little harder, but we can still do that, even if it's just our daily stand-ups and our other sessions, sprint plannings and agile meetings or whatever. We still work together daily. We do that, and we have been doing it for a while at Intermedics. Build projects around motivated individuals. I can certainly say we've had fantastic results with that here. We've got a great group of people, and they're certainly motivated, and there's no problem with that as a distributed team. This is the hard one, face-to-face conversations. We can cheat and say video calls are face-to-face, and they're a little better than audio calls. So what do? We do our best to work around this one. We do all those things in the last slide to reduce that communication tax. Working software, we do that. Agile sustainable development. Continuous attention to technical excellence, simplicity. Not a problem for distributed teams. Self-organizing teams. We can do that across the ocean. It's a little bit harder. The communications are harder, but it's certainly doable. And retrospectives. This is another one that we can do, but it's harder. And I have to admit, this is one that's kind of been on my radar for a while. I've done a lot of retrospectives, some of them remotely, most of them locally, and I really struggle to make them effective, and that's really one of my objectives before I leave here, is to figure out a way to improve our process for doing these at Intermedics. So we really can learn and improve. So I think what's interesting for me is that our big globally distributed teams, we don't really need to adapt to Agile much. We just need to really follow it carefully. And we need to do whatever we can to communicate well. One of the things that I found, I think probably makes the biggest impact for us in terms of improving our ability to deliver agilely across team, as a global team, is improving our ability to write user stories. We did have quality issues early on when we started. There was a lot of commotion, a lot of concern. But when we looked back, when we reflected, well, we saw that, I won't say all, but a lot of those issues weren't bad software. It was bad requirements or bad communication of the requirements. The guys here didn't really know exactly what they were supposed to build. So let's just talk for a few minutes about how do I write better user stories. Well, here's one. As a user, I want to register for a session. Okay. Here's another. As a conference attendee, I want to register for a session so that I'm guaranteed a spot in my preferred session, and I can receive updates about that session. I think that's a lot better. I mean, I like that the first one's short. But user stories are trying to answer 3 questions. Who? What? And optionally, why? So in the first one, who is a user? That's just lazy. But that doesn't tell me anything. I can't get in the head of I'm a user. I can understand what it means to be a conference attendee. I hope you guys have a pretty good ability to imagine that right now. What do I want to do? I want to register for a session. It's really the same in both those, so it doesn't matter. But I think actually the second one helps a tiny bit just because it's more clear that we're talking about a conference attendee, that it's a conference. The first one, you could look at that and not be really sure what it's talking about. And then the last one is we address the why. And you look at this one, you get a little imaginative about that why. I think the first one is kind of obvious. I want to register because I want to make sure I can get into the session I want to see. You guys are probably wishing you'd register for the other session, but also, wouldn't it be great if you could be notified if the session got canceled, or we changed the time, or moved to a different room? So understanding the motivation is really helpful to get into the brain of that person and think about how would I design the software to work for that person. Here's another version of this. This one was written by a developer, right? So who? I'm sure this doesn't make any sense either, and haven't been developing for too long. As a user with registration privileges, well, yeah, that's precise. I could understand and look in the database to see who has, permissions. But really, I'm just a user. I'm back to being just a user. And with the limited ability to imagine what that person's thinking and what their experience and motivations are. All this other technical stuff makes it really hard to read. Because in the end, it's really the same as the first one. It's just got a whole bunch of implementation details. And the truth is that by the time we get to implement this story, and who knows how long it is between when you write it and when you implement it, I mean, half the technology stuff could change. I mean, maybe we'll need a 50 by 50 pixel icon for a Retina display, or 150 by 150 for an iPhone 6. Maybe we're going to be using different JavaScript libraries, maybe whatever, it doesn't matter. So you really want to avoid getting any implementation details in this part of the user story. You want to keep it clean and where people can understand it. Ron Jeffries was kind of famous for the 3 C's of user stories. And this was back in the extreme programming XP days, I think before Agile really even started being called Agile. First C is the card. That's because they did everything on index cards. We don't really do that so much on distributed teams because they don't travel well. But the card was the user story that we just read as a I want to, because, or so that. The conversation. And this is really the power behind user stories. User stories aren't a contract. They're a subject to have a conversation about. To go in and say, okay, now I'm a conference attendee, I want to register. What do I need to do? Why? How should this thing work? We don't have the illusion that 500 pages of requirements that say the system shall display a cancel button that's 16 pixels wide and 8 pixels high, and it's in the right corner, and that's not helpful. Developers and designers can figure that out when they build it. What's helpful is getting to the point of what the user really needs to do and their motivation and what they want, and to be able to find that clearly in your requirements that you're writing. The last C is confirmation. Nowadays, we usually call it acceptance criteria or acceptance tests. Basically, how do I know I'm done? And I think this is probably the area where we have been and need to improve the most, that really makes the biggest difference for a distributed team. So just some examples. If you really think about those user stories we talked about, what are some acceptance criteria you might have for those user stories? Well, first thing is you need to think about who are the other users? What are the other roles? So conference attendee wants to do it, but a speaker might want to attend some of the other sessions too. And there's probably other roles as well, isn't it? Is somebody who's an administrator here or who's running the sessions, should they be able to or not? I want to be able to choose from all the sessions, but I shouldn't be able to register for a session that's at the same time as what I'm already registered for. That's just going to cause me problems. And I shouldn't be able to register for one that's full. But what if it is full? Should we just say no? Maybe I can request to be put on the wait list. So if a spot opens up, I can be added. Or maybe we even have the organizers notified that, hey, this session's filled. Maybe we should look at switching rooms so that this really popular one gets switched to a different room, to a bigger room. And then we can automatically update and move all these people from the wait list into the session. I can see the information I need to make a good decision. I can see the time and the speaker and the subject and the abstract and all that other stuff. A message informs me of how I'll be notified of updates. So in that screen, if I have a preferred contact method, it's going to tell me, we're going to send you a text message. If anything changes, you need to get an update. Or if you don't, we'll say, hey, you're not signed up for anything, and if you want to, go to your profile. Or we don't really care at this point exactly how that's implemented, but we know we're not done until there's a way to do that. Maybe I can see my progress towards signing up for all the time slots. Have I signed up for all the sessions I need to, or have I forgotten to sign up for one at the 4:37 start time? Performance ones are kind of sketchy, but they still make sense. I need to be able to sign up in a minute or less, maybe not counting the time I spend reading all the abstracts and descriptions and bios. It's important, because if it's going to take 10 minutes to do it, people are just not going to bother signing up. They're just going to show up. And that's not what we want. maybe I can filter by language and track. So if I don't speak English, I'm not going to have to look at all those other ones. I'll just see the ones I want. Again, distributed teams, because the communication's more of a challenge, having really, really good acceptance criteria is even more important. I think it's important for any team. I just think it's even more important for distributed teams. And so I've been really on a mission to make this something that our people do and really spend time on. And one of the reasons why we've got the Andres experiment is someone to help our product owner invest the time and write better acceptance criteria, so we really know when we are done. Okay. Any questions?
So how do you like
Sorry.
distributed team?
For the local, could you please repeat for ours?
Okay, how would you compare? How much it's more difficult? Is it a little bit more difficult? Is it devices not effective or what? How do you see that?
Okay. It's really evolved. Let me actually take a step back and say in two ways. In some ways, it's better, because we were struggling in the US to find the good, strong talent that we could afford to pay, and we found it here. I mean, we've got a great group of guys here that are doing great work. So without it, we wouldn't even have the people to do it. Also, there's the benefit of working 2 shifts. So part of our job is to make sure that these systems are operating properly in the production environment. And if there's a problem in the middle of the night in the United States, instead of somebody getting paged and dragged out of bed and trying to figure out the problem while they're still half asleep, there's somebody here in the office who's probably awake and notified, and a few people can coordinate and be on the network and fix it right away. But the communication is definitely a huge problem. I mean, it slows down everything. It makes it harder. It makes it, honestly, it makes it more frustrating too. I think there's times when people, it really even hurts morale, because people just get frustrated when we can't talk. Every now and then you'll have a bad phone line and you throw in all the other challenges and you have this what? Huh? What? What? And you can hear people as they repeat it themselves just get more and more frustrated. And that's bad for productivity. And it makes it less fun to work. But I think we've gotten a lot better. I mean, I think when we started, we hadn't learned a lot of these lessons, and our infrastructure for communications wasn't as good. And I would say, distributed teams, maybe we were 20% as effective as a co-located team. But I think now we've gotten much, much closer to 100%. It's been a huge difference. And I mean, I would hope that I would think Marius and Gidrius maybe could chime in on what you think. Okay, we got a yeah.
Any more questions?
I'm curious whether there were any communications problems or any other problems in working this way that you didn't expect. I know there are a lot of things that we think about distributed teams and what are the typical challenges, but was there anything that went wrong that you just thought, wow, none of us saw that coming?
Probably is, and I've forgotten them by now. But the one that pops into my mind is just the stupid infrastructure ones when the phone system goes down. We've had a few times, because our building we have an old building that we're remodeling. Every few weeks we move to a new space as they finish a new one, and other people come backfill us, and every now and then they screw up the phone system, and all of a sudden we can't make phone calls. Or it just gets disconnected every 45 seconds, which makes for a really fun conversation.